My name is Hannah Cole. I'm 33, and for most of my life, I've been my family's emergency contact, unpaid accountant, and emotional shock absorber. If my mother had to describe me in one word, it would be reliable. If I had to describe my family in one word, it would be costly. I work as an operations director for a regional logistics firm based in Illinois. Freight schedules, compliance audits, supply chains. Systems either work or they fail. People lie, numbers don't. The 25th wedding anniversary gala was designed to look like a fairy tale, but it smelled like a transaction. The ballroom of the country club outside Naperville was thick with white roses and expensive perfume. My mother, Evelyn Cole, stood at the center of the room in a champagne-colored gown that cost more than my first apartment lease, accepting compliments with the effortless grace of someone who believes admiration is owed to her. My father, Richard, stood beside her, his hand resting possessively at the small of her back. They looked flawless. They looked untouchable. I stood near a marble column, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching them. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to observe. It happened at 8:47 p.m. I saw my mother lean in toward my father, her lips barely moving, a whisper hidden beneath the applause for the string quartet. My father nodded once, sharp and decisive, and pulled his phone from his jacket. He typed a short message and slipped it back into his pocket. Across the room, my younger brother Lucas's phone lit up. He glanced at it, adjusted his cufflinks, and excused himself through a side door without saying goodbye to the woman on his arm. They thought they were subtle. They thought wealth made them invisible, and they thought I was too busy coordinating seating charts and catering logistics to notice the machinery of betrayal grinding into motion. They were wrong. 12 minutes later, my clutch vibrated against my hip. Not a call, not a text, a specific pulse pattern, the silent alarm from my downtown Chicago condo. I didn't react. I didn't gasp or spill my drink. I felt something cold and steady settle in my chest. Calm. Certainty. I turned away from the ballroom and slipped my phone into my hand. The security app opened instantly. A live feed filled the screen. Lucas stood in my home office. He wasn't using a key. He was using a crowbar, prying open the interior door. Wood splintered as he stepped inside. In his other hand was a heavy industrial degaussing magnet. He wasn't there to steal jewelry or cash. He was there to destroy data. The servers in that room contained documentation tied to $3.9 million siphoned from a charitable foundation over 6 years. Funds rerouted through shell vendors, compliance reports forged, my name used as the operational signature. Most people would panic watching their brother break into their home to erase their livelihood. My pulse stayed steady. This wasn't a break-in, it was confirmation. For months, I'd suspected that when the walls closed in, they wouldn't protect me, they would sacrifice me. Now I had proof in high definition. Lucas moved toward the decoy server tower I'd left visible on the desk, exactly where he needed to be. I didn't call the police. I didn't need to. I opened an encrypted messaging app and sent a single instruction to the private investigator and 2 off-duty officers stationed in an unmarked van behind my building. Execute. I slid the phone back into my clutch and turned toward the ballroom. My mother caught my eye from across the room and smiled, tight, confident, victorious. She thought the loose end was being handled. I smiled back, accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, and took a slow sip. The bubbles were sharp and cold. It tasted like a trap closing. 6 months earlier, I'd stayed late at the foundation office preparing for an audit. The books were intentionally complex, layered with transfers between consulting firms that existed only on paper. I was exhausted and ready to go home to my son, but one number wouldn't let go of my attention. A recurring $82,000 transfer to a vendor called HC Solutions, my initials, a company I had never heard of. I dug deeper. It wasn't one payment, it was dozens. My name, my social security number, my forged signature. A shadow company built to funnel millions through my identity. I confronted them the next morning. I laid the spreadsheets on my father's desk. He didn't look up from his tablet. My mother adjusted flowers by the window and sighed. "You don't understand high-level finance, Hannah," she said gently. "We're protecting your future. managing assets for you, minimizing tax exposure. Thanking them, she implied, would be appropriate. I told them I wanted it stopped. I told them the money needed to be returned. My father finally looked up. "You're operational," he said. "You handle details, leave strategy to us." That was the moment everything snapped into focus. For 33 years, I mistook control for care, surveillance for love, ownership for protection, and standing in that ballroom, watching my brother dismantle a server he thought held my downfall, I knew exactly what they were doing and exactly how it would end. I was wrong. It wasn't protection, it was ownership. They didn't see me as a daughter, they saw me as a resource, an asset to be utilized, depleted, and when the liability became too high, liquidated. They framed their financial abuse as parental care so effectively that even I, an operations director who could spot a supply chain inefficiency from 3 states away, hadn't recognized the restraints until they were already rusted shut around my wrists. But I saw them now, and I had the key. Back in the ballroom, the applause softened as my mother stepped up to the microphone. The spotlight caught the diamonds at her throat, igniting them into blinding points of light. She cleared her throat, a practiced sound meant to command silence. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate 25 years of building something truly meaningful," she began, her voice warm and polished like melted chocolate. "When Richard and I founded the Cole Family Trust, we shared a vision of leaving the world better than we found it, of building a legacy rooted in integrity and service." My phone buzzed in my hand, a text from my mother. "Smile, Hannah, you look miserable. People are watching." I looked up. She was smiling radiantly at the audience, while her thumbs worked behind the podium. "And of course," she continued, gesturing vaguely in my direction without actually looking at me, "none of this would be possible without our children. Our son, Lucas, who is working tirelessly behind the scenes tonight to secure our future." Polite applause rippled through the room. Lucas wasn't working, he was committing a felony, but to them his absence was proof of dedication. "And our daughter, Hannah," she added, her tone shifting, thinning just enough to sting, "our little helper, always handling the details so the rest of us can focus on the bigger picture." The phrase lingered in the air, sweet and toxic, praise disguised as dismissal, a reminder of my place. I wasn't the architect, I was the janitor. I cleaned up the mess so they could walk across polished floors without ever looking down. I glanced at my phone again. The security feed was frozen in its last frame. Lucas, crowbar raised, reaching for the server. They thought they'd won. They believed the evidence was gone, erased by their golden boy. They believed they were untouchable, shielded by money, reputation, and unfiltered arrogance. They were celebrating my erasure. Then a new notification appeared, not from my mother, from the private investigator. "Subject detained, police on site, evidence secured." The breath I hadn't realized I was holding finally released. The noise of the ballroom dulled, applause and music collapsing into a distant hum. The world narrowed to the glow of my screen. It was over. I looked back to the stage. My parents were still smiling, hands intertwined, flawless and confident. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the helper or the fixer or the spare part. I felt powerful. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was the witness. I set my glass down on a passing tray, smoothed the front of my dress, and with calm, deliberate steps, began walking toward the stage. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cause a scene. I tapped my father on the shoulder, between the shoulder blades of his tailored jacket. When he turned, irritation flashing across his face, I leaned in and whispered 5 words. "The police have the drives." The color drained from his face instantly, like a flower wilting in fast forward. He grabbed my mother's arm, hard enough to bruise, and steered us toward the private cloakroom off the main hall. The room was quiet, insulated by rows of fur coats and cashmere wraps. It smelled like cedar and panic. My mother smoothed her dress, eyes darting to the door. "What did you do, Hannah?" she hissed. "Lucas is currently in the back of a squad car," I said evenly. "He triggered the silent alarm I installed 3 weeks ago. The police recovered the magnets and the crowbar." "You called the police on your own brother?" my father snapped, disbelief cracking into rage. We were protecting this family, protecting you. I opened my clutch and removed the folded report from the private investigator. I handed it to him. I know about the embezzlement, I said, the $3.9 million, but that wasn't the endgame. That was just theft. I watched his eyes scan the page, watched the precise moment comprehension set in. They didn't just catch Lucas trying to wipe the servers, I continued, looking at my mother. They found the upload queue on his laptop, a folder labeled Project Hannah. You weren't erasing evidence, you were planting it. Backdated documents, digital signatures tied to my credentials, a trail designed to lead straight to my desk. My mother went completely still. She didn't deny it. She didn't speak. That silence was the confirmation. For years, I thought I was the disappointment, the spare air kept around because I was useful. But I wasn't just useful. I was their insurance policy. They positioned me in operations, buried me in compliance, made sure my name touched every process so that when everything collapsed, I would be the one crushed underneath it. They were prepared to send me to federal prison to preserve their image and Lucas's future ambitions. It wasn't betrayal, it was strategy. We needed a contingency, my father stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. We can fix this. We have attorneys. We can say it was a mistake. We can pay you. How much do you want? I looked at them and calculated exactly what my life was worth to them. You can't pay me, I said. I'm not your employee, and I'm not your daughter. I stepped back toward the door. I'm the state's witness, and the district attorney already has copies of everything. You gave them the files, my mother whispered. Her voice was thin and brittle, stretched tight like wire about to snap. You gave them us. I gave them the criminals, I corrected calmly. I just happened to share a last name with them. This was the moment I had prepared for. I had expected rage. I had expected the towering, terrifying anger that defined my childhood, the cold silences and surgical criticisms designed to peel confidence down to bone. But what I saw wasn't rage. It was something smaller, something weaker. I was watching a narcissist collapse. When someone builds their entire identity on control and suddenly loses it, they don't reflect, they short-circuit. My mother didn't see a daughter she had harmed. She saw a tool that had malfunctioned, a possession that had rebelled. You ungrateful little brat, she shrieked, lunging toward me. My father caught her by the waist and held her back. After everything we gave you, the condo, the career, the connections, you made me a liability, I said evenly, and then you tried to write me off. Her aggression evaporated instantly, replaced by a frantic desperation. She sagged against my father, tears cutting channels through her makeup. It was a performance, but it was also real fear. She wasn't crying for me, she was crying for the gala, for the reputation, for the life disintegrating by the second. Hannah, please, she sobbed, reaching for me. The switch was jarring, almost nauseating. We can fix this. We're a family. You can't send your own mother to prison. Think about what people will say. Think about the trust. I watched her the way an auditor reviews a fraudulent ledger. This was her cycle. Intimidate, collapse, guilt. If she couldn't dominate me, she would try to consume me emotionally. She needed me to absorb the consequences one last time so she could remain spotless. The trust is a crime scene, Mom, I said, and I'm done cleaning it up. I turned toward the door. No, she screamed, dropping to her knees. Silk pooled around her on the dusty floor, a grotesque image of fallen royalty. You can't leave us. You'll be alone. No one will want you. You'll be an orphan. I stopped with my hand on the brass handle. The threat lingered, the ultimate fear they had trained into me since childhood, that their conditional love was the only oxygen I'd ever have. I looked back. My father stood gray and shaking against the wall. My mother knelt on the floor, mourning her power, not her child. They looked like strangers. I've been an orphan for years, I said quietly. I just didn't know it until tonight. I opened the door and stepped out. Cool air hit my face. Behind me, my mother's wailing was swallowed as the door clicked shut. I walked down the corridor, past laughing guests, past a celebration of a lie. And then I heard it, faint at first, then rising over the music and applause. Sirens. 3 weeks later, pale morning light filtered through the blinds of my Chicago condo. The apartment was quiet. No buzzing phone, no crisis texts, no demands to fix disasters I didn't create. I sat at the kitchen table watching my son Noah methodically drown pancakes in syrup like it was serious work. He looked up, syrup on his chin. "Mom, is Grandma coming over today?" The question hung in the air, innocent and heavy. "Nobody," I said, pouring coffee. "Grandma and Grandpa won't be visiting for a while. Are they in timeout?" I smiled. It was the simplest truth I'd heard yet. The fallout was swift and total. Arrests at the gala dominated headlines across Illinois. Prominent philanthropists charged with a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Lucas was denied bail as a flight risk due to offshore accounts. My parents were placed under house arrest, assets frozen, passports seized. Their attorneys were already circling, turning on each other like animals on a sinking ship. I was cleared completely. The files I submitted were exhaustive. Forensic accountants marveled at the precision of the records documenting my own attempted framing. I had done my job too well. Later, I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. I scrolled to the group labeled Family, the thread where guilt was deployed and silence was weaponized. I tapped Edit, then Delete. The names disappeared. No fanfare, no applause, just a small digital emptiness where a burden used to live. I looked back at Noah. He was safe. He was happy. He would grow up knowing that truth matters, that actions have consequences, and that love is simply love, unconditional, safe, never for sale. "Hey," I said. Noah looked up. "Want another pancake?" "Yes, please." I turned back to the stove as the batter hit the pan with a soft, promising sizzle. Life went on. The world kept turning. And for the first time in 33 years, the ground beneath my feet felt solid. If this story resonated with you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment your perspective or the biggest lesson you took away.